Chapter 5. The Emergency Zoo. Monday evening to Tuesday the 29th of August, 1939. Dad was silent all through tea. Mum fussed around with her worried look on her face. Tilly ate as little as possible, sneaking bits of food onto her lap whenever no one was looking. Finally, sliding her napkin under the table and wrapping the food up, she said, "May I be excused, please?" "Where's your gas mask?" Dad barked at her. "Or is that lost too?" No, of course not," muttered Tilly. "Well, it's a funny thing, Mother, isn't it? The very day I say the dog's going to the vet, she runs away." Mum nodded, but she didn't say anything. "Then Donald tells me when I stopped by the shop for a word on the way home from work today that Rosie's cat Tinkerbell is missing," Dad goes on. "So what do you have to say for yourself, my girl?" "Rosie and I searched everywhere for Bonnie. I'm sure she'll come home soon, Dad." The tears which Tilly had been holding back spurted out of her eyes, and she buried her face in her napkin. I love Bonnie so much, and now she's gone." Mum got up and pulled Tilly's head around her apron. Tilly sniffed in the familiar cooking smells. There, my love," Mum murmured. "Dad and I don't mean to be cruel, do we, Dad?" "No, of course not," said Dad in a kinder voice. When Tilly looked up, she could see his ears had gone bright red, which they always did when he was upset. He does feel sorry, she thought, and she almost blurted out the truth. But then Dad said, "We have no choice. We can't keep a pet through the war, can we, Mother?" Mum shook her head and wiped a tear away with a corner of her apron. Nothing was changing their minds, Tilly realised, and she knew she would have to keep this secret now for the whole of the war, perhaps for years and years. As she lay in her bed that night, she tried to imagine Bonnie in the cold, gloomy hut. "She must think I've abandoned her forever," was her last thought as she fell asleep. Tuesday morning was bright and sunny as Tilly raced outside after breakfast, grabbed her bike and pedalled to meet Rosie on the bridge. Without a word, they both rode as fast as they could to their den. Bonnie was barking as they threw their bikes down in the clearing. Tilly ran through the door, Rosie puffing behind her, and grabbed her dog, who was almost strangling herself as she jumped and pulled against the rope. "Bonnie, darling, you're all right, thank goodness." Bonnie leapt into Tilly's arms, her big rough tongue licking and licking all over her cheeks and nose. Tilly breathed in the musky smell and wondered how on earth she would ever leave Bonnie alone again. It had been so hard to fall asleep last night without her dear little dog flopping across her legs. Rosie was murmuring to Tinkerbell, "Good morning, my angel. Are you going to give me a morning kiss?" Tilly realised Bonnie, who started to bark and run outside, waiting at the door and barking some more. She didn't want to let Tilly out of her sight, even to relieve herself in the clearing. "Is Tinks all right?" asked Tilly, holding back for a second. "She's still sleeping, but she's warm and cosy," said Rosie, pulling the cat onto her lap and kissing her button nose. "You go out with Bonnie." Relieved, Tilly raced outside, and when Bonnie was ready, they ran down to the stream for a paddle and a drink. All her fears of the night before had vanished the minute she saw her beloved pet. "Bonnie Bonbons, I love you," she shouted with joy, and Bonnie paused in her lapping to woof back. As they walked back to the hut after a long drink and play in the water, Tilly heard the sound of whooping and laughing, and then bikes broke through the thicket and into the clearing. Someone yelled, "Watcha, Tills!" "Oh no," groaned Tilly to herself. It was Neville Scudder from Canal Street School. Neville was 12, like Tilly and Rosie, and he had his younger brother and sister, Sydney and Pam, with him. Sydney, who was 10, was with untidy fair hair like all the Scudders and bony legs poking through patchy grey shorts, skidded to a halt in front of Tilly and leapt off his bike. It was too big for him to do anything else. "Oi, Nev, let's build a fire right here." "Shut up," panted Neville as he pulled up his brakes. Pam, who was only 7, pulled up next to him, sniffing, her face smudged with tears. She wore a cardigan which was too small for her, and unravelling around the hem a patched grey skirt and plimsolls with no socks. None of the Scudders ever looked as if they had had a bath or even a wash. "Tilly," called out Pam, "Nev says you're going to save our pets." Then she let out a big sob. Neville told her to shut up. Rosie came out of the hut cuddling Tinkerbell, her eyebrows knitted in a deep frown. "How did you find us?" Tilly said to Neville. "Followed you. You kept keeping your pets here. The grown-ups want to kill 'em." Neville was not quite as tall as Tilly and was very thin. Tilly remembered seeing him once at the swimming pool, and all his ribs stuck out either side of his narrow chest. The Scudders lived by the canal near their school. Tilly's mum had told her that there was a new baby and their mother was very unwell. "You're not to go near those children," Mum had told her with a frown. "You'll catch nits of all sorts." But Tilly and Rosie thought the Scudders were good fun, and they were quite fearless. Could they keep a secret? "Well," said Tilly, "this is our den, and we've had it all summer, and it's private." "But we've got to save the guineas and Clover," wailed Pam, and she burst into more loud sobs. "Dad says they're for the pot," said Sydney. "You can't eat guinea pigs," said Tilly. "Actually, you can," said Rosie. "They raise them in South America. They eat them like we eat rabbits." "You can't eat Clover, you can't," wailed Pam, "because I love him and I told Miss Cotton I would never let anything happen to him." She reached into the large basket of the front of Neville's bike and pulled aside an old piece of sacking. Nestling in some rather soiled-looking newspaper were 2 guinea pigs and a plump brown rabbit with a white bobtail. Pam grabbed the rabbit by the scruff of his neck and picked him up, cuddling him in her arms. "Goodness," said Rosie, "looks like you're trying to hang him." "He likes it," said Pam. "They're from the school," said Neville. "Pam offered to look after 'em for the holidays. Dunno why." "Because I love 'em." "I said shut up." Neville shook his fist towards Pam. "Anyways," he went on, "the school don't want 'em back. What with the war about to start. Miss Cotton came round last night and told Dad. He reckons we can cook 'em, but Pam," he raised his eyebrows and propped his bike against the tree. "Bet I could sell 'em for a shilling," said Sydney. "Not if you want to see Christmas," said Pam, giving him a hard stare. "Please, Tilly, can't you look after our pets?" "We couldn't possibly," started Tilly. "Yes, of course we can," said Rosie. "We have to save the pets from the grown-ups before there are no more animals left on this earth. So now we have 1 cat, 1 dog, 2 guinea pigs, and a rabbit." Tilly was just about to say that there was more than enough when she heard a cheery whistle, and looking over to the thicket she saw Mrs. Benson's Alec appear, carrying what looked like a fish tank. "Neville says something about a hiding place for pets. I need you to take Freddie." Alec lowered the tank gently on the ground. He wore a peaked cap, a thick blue jacket and shiny buttons and heavy boots. Alec was 15 and had just started work in London Zoo. "Where'd you get him?" asked Tilly, peering in through the glass wall of the tank. All she could see was leaves and twigs. "The zoo. They're turning off the heat in the reptile house tomorrow, so all the poisonous snakes and spiders and such like would die," said Alec. "Good thing too," muttered Neville. "How can you say such a thing?" cried Rosie, stepping forward, her green eyes flashing. "A snake has just as much right to live as any other animal, and so do the spiders and the lions and the tigers and all the animals." "But I agree, began Tilly. But Alec interrupted with a snort. "Now look here. If the zoo gets bombed and the pythons escape—" "Caw," said Sydney. "You swallowed that nice cat of yours whole," Alec finished. Rosie stuck her chin in the air and said, "Well, what about the elephants and the lions and the tigers? They could run around trampling on people and eat them." "And goring them to death," cried Sydney. He picked up a stick and stabbed it in the air. "We could play gladiators." "Shut up," said Neville. "It's a crying shame," agreed Alec. "Some of the snakes are rare and you should see the markings on them. Right beautiful they are. I ain't got anything against any living creature. We all feel the same in the zoo. Very upset some of the older men are, I can tell you. We got bird-eating spiders and scorpions, all sorts. But Headkeeper says if a bomb falls on the zoo, the poisonous animals would escape and kill people. He says they won't kill the Komodo dragons. They'll move him and all the other big animals out to places like Whipsnade in the countryside. So don't worry about the elephants and such like." "Oh, that's a relief," said Tilly. "So what's in your tank?" "Freddie," said Alec. "Saw him being born only last Saturday, so I couldn't let them have him." "What is he?" asked Rosie, coming over to peer in the tank. "Baby cobra." "What?" Rosie gave out a squeal and stepped back. "He's quite safe and I'll look after him," said Alec. "Please take him, Tilly. I can't let him die." "Looks like the zoo's moved to the woods, ain't it, Tills?" said Sydney. Tilly exchanged looks with Rosie, who gave her a firm nod. Tilly puffed her cheeks out and then, folding her arms, she said, "Well, I suppose we're the emergency zoo." They all cheered, and Alex pushed his cap onto the back of his head with a grin. Then Rosie said in what Tilly called her Megan voice, "That's all very well, but we have to keep this a deadly secret or our zoo won't last long." "What if we want to help other kids here save their pets?" asked Alec. "We're full," muttered Neville. "No, we ain't. This place is almost as big as our classroom," said Sydney. Tilly was thinking hard, and now she said, "We need a password so that only people we trust will know about our emergency zoo." "I was thinking the same thing, and I've got one," said Rosie. "Doff Tep. It's pet food backwards." "That's it," said Tilly. "Right, everyone, you can tell a child where to come if they need to hide a pet and give them the password. We'll take turns keeping lookout in the thicket. Anyone who comes near has to say the password before we let them in the den." Everyone agreed to Rosie, and Rosie said, "We'd better get the pets settled for the night." They set to work, laughing and chattering as they made the den ready. Pam pulled up great swathes of fresh grass and filled up a crate for the guinea pigs and another for the rabbit. Neville and Sydney found the chicken wire around the back of the hut, and they put this over the top of each crate, tied it down with pieces of string. "That'll stop the foxes, Tails," said Sydney. Pam started to wail again. Neville told her to shut up. Alex's tank was given a place in the dark corner. "I've got to keep Freddie warm until I work out what to do with him," Alec told Tilly. "What does he eat?" Alec grinned and pulled out a dead rat out of his pocket. Tilly gasped, but was pleased with herself that she didn't scream. Alec was 15, and she didn't want him to think that she was a crybaby. A zookeeper, even a beginner zookeeper, would be useful. Alec pushed aside the heavy metal lid on top of the tank and dropped the rat in. Freddie didn't move. "Maybe he's not hungry," said Tilly. "He's cold now. I'll come round in the morning and take him out in the sun for a bit. He'll soon wake up and start eating. You'll see." "I want to see too," said Sydney, leaning forward. "Now, you listen, Nipper," said Alec, turning to him with a fierce look on his face. "You never ever touch this tank. If I see your fingers anywhere on the tank or anywhere near it, I'll cut 'em off." Sydney stuck his chin in the air defiantly, but gave a grudging nod and shoved his hands into his pockets. "Right then," said Alec to Tilly. "That should keep him away." Is this war?" wondered Tilly, as they biked away after another heartbreaking parting from their pets. Ted Bow shot his greyhound. Dad wants to murder Bonnie, and Sydney would be bitten to death if Alec doesn't almost frighten him to death.